What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Play the Fight Song College Football Show. Happy New Year. It's 2025, and if you're joining us again, we appreciate you being here. Already got our boy GA in the chat. A lot of energy going into the college football playoff semifinals, and it's going to be a good week. We got a game tomorrow, gentlemen, and a game on Friday. As you can see, we're without Reese to start the new year. He'll be here way later on in the year, but we miss him, and we love him very much. How are we doing tonight, JP? Ready to talk semifinal football?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pumped for tomorrow night's game. I know I got a sports bar around here picked out, about to belly up, eat some wings, have a couple, watch some good football. Friday night, plans up in the air, but it'll be on everywhere around here. Pumped for it. I got to say, I think these four teams fit really well into what this era of the 12-team college football playoff is supposed to be. It's a representation of the independents, the SEC and the Big Ten. Obviously, you'd like to see some ACC, Big 12 mixed in there some years. But I think the four teams represent very much what you'll get within this structure of the playoff, the way it's set up right now.
Yeah, UMass is really prideful. Wow. representing the independents. We belong.
UMass, one of the historically worst programs in college football history. Jake, how are we doing tonight? Are we feeling good? No more Big 12 representative in the college football playoff? How are you feeling about that?
Damn shame. Has it been? Is that the last time we chatted? Was before that?
Yeah,
game,
we had the weird holidays, so we kind of moved things around accordingly.
Yeah, it feels like it's been too long. Yeah, I'm kind of glad we've maybe taken some time off. I don't know if me and Jordan don't need to get into another argument over all that stuff that just ends on ends and never gets solved with targeting and all that other bullshit. But no, I do agree with JP that these four, I am excited. These are four coaches who one of them is going to win their first national title. Still have four big name brands, but it's not the four brands that like your Alabamas, your Georgias, LSU that have just been dominating, winning back-to-backs, winning a long string of national titles. So a good mix of both. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
And it feels like the Texas name being in it doesn't feel like it's very SEC, and they like to pound their chest now that they're in that conference. But it's like you're saying, it's not the SEC brands that people
whatever helps them sleep at night, Jordan. Whatever helps the SEC sleep at night. Right now.
I'm just saying I feel like I don't know if the SEC claims them as much quite yet, but what I'm saying,
they do now.
Yeah, they do now. 100%. Yeah, just like the outside fan base, like you're saying, got tired of the LSU, the Alabama, the Georgia, that stuff like that. Like nobody else is ever going to win. This isn't what Cinderella usually looks like in her gown and the glass slipper, right? But in the numbers, it is.
None of these teams would have been in the original four, right?
No.
Because,
I mean, you can argue Notre Dame.
Yeah, maybe Notre.
Why wouldn't they be?
They would have been over probably Arizona State or Boise, just because their rank was higher than both of those teams.
They would have ended up getting in if we were giving it to a committee for four teams. You're leaving out the Mountain West champ.
Let's be said, like that's the reason. Yeah. 3 of 4 weren't going to be in the original 14 playoff. So that's exactly why we have this.
Yeah, it actually did pan out to be something that looks worthwhile. I mean, none of the top 4 seeds win. All of the bye teams lose. It's kind of the conversation that we had where is the bye beneficial? It looked like a lot of those teams got off to slow starts that killed them. Arizona State probably looked the best and most competitive, which is saying a lot for who they played coming out of the SEC. But we will recap those tonight as well as cover the transfer portal. And we're going to, of course, preview the college football semifinal with the Orange Bowl and Cotton Bowl. But let's lead it off tonight with the recaps of those games. I'll let Jake go first. I want to talk about Texas and Arizona State. Let's break down this matchup. JP and I got into it a little bit late in that game. I thought it was targeting, pretty blatant, led with the crown of the helmet. It kind of cost Arizona State a good chance to win the game in regulation. But what did you think of the game overall? I thought Arizona State competed well.
You competed as well as you could have. You should have won the game because not even the targeting call aside, if you're Arizona State, you're just kicking yourself because, you choose to punt after the targeting call gets stands or whatever on 4th and 5, when I said you should have, we were kind of, the guys I was watching with, they're like, no, the defense was playing so well. I'm like, no, this is what Kenny Dillingham does. Like, I understand the defense was playing well in the second half, but you always go for it. You just did a fake punt on your own 15 to end the first half when they don't get that. They're down 21 points.
Right.
So I just, that's been his mantra all year. I was disappointed that he didn't go for it there at midfield. Put the pressure on Auburn to miss another kick. And then in overtime, I mean, it doesn't get any closer than having a 4th and 13 back against the wall and you give up a touchdown. So the targeting is what it is, or non-targeting, whatever. But if you're Arizona State, you're just disappointed in that you had chances to win the game outside of that targeting call. So we'll get into the Ohio State Texas stuff. There's a lot of things that really concern me for Texas that Arizona State showed out of Texas. But I, as a Big 12 fan, and GA's comment before we got started was, do you root for these top 4 teams if they're outside of your conference? Or we could pull the question up too. It's kind of relatable. But I haven't root for a non-Iowa State team as hard as I was rooting for Arizona State in that game. I was pretty pissed. I was like, boy, I haven't been this pissed over a non-Colts or Iowa State loss in quite some time. I was just pissed the way it happened, pissed at the targeting call, pissed they were just one play away of beating the former Big 12 school.
It's a good question that comes in from some GA. JP popped it up. It does Play the Fight song root for or against their conference teams in situations such as the college football playoff right now? Example A, JP and I rooting for Ohio State or Penn State out of the Big Ten. And then Jake's obviously just admitted to rooting for Arizona State pretty hard. But he said he can't root for any of these 4 teams because of who they are. But Xavier Watts, who plays defensive back for Notre Dame, is from Omaha, Nebraska. So he can forego that and maybe root for Notre Dame. What do you think on this? I like this question. JP, I'll let you answer it first.
You know, I like to tell myself that I don't sit there like I feel like the SEC does in some spots. And the Big 12 has started to do this as well. And that's, to the fault that they felt like they were attacked by a lot of the country, just teams leaving the conference, right? Getting left out in some spots. I like the Big Ten and I want the Big Ten to do well, but I'm not, if I'm cheering for a team from the Big Ten, usually it's not because they are a Big Ten school. I feel like the Big Ten has a distaste for everybody else in the conference. Like there are schools within the Big Ten that I really just don't like. Like I'm never going to find myself rooting for Minnesota. I'm never going to find myself rooting for Wisconsin, Can I
interject by saying that you're going to get that in the SEC and the Big Ten, because like in the Big 12 situation, we're all pulling for each other because you get one team to represent your entire conference in a playoff. Whereas the Big Ten and the SEC, you're always going to get your 3 teams in. So it's like, whatever. I mean, it's fine.
Going through like when bowl season, kind of prior to the playoff, when media outlets started claiming it, games that don't matter kind of stuff. I was pulling for the Big Ten in those situations because it was true conference versus conference in a lot of spots. And you did want, to be able to pound your chest about your strength of schedule and how tough your conference actually was. In that sense, I definitely was. But I don't have a true hate for any of the teams in this 14 playoff at all. Like I don't like
Ohio State a little bit.
That's more like wrestling based and that rivalry and just like the interjection between the fan bases after the injury thing in Kinnick a couple years ago, where like players were going down. Sometimes they were hurt, sometimes they weren't. Iowa fans are booed anyway. And then like I don't dislike Texas. I don't have anything against them. I don't have anything against Ohio State other than people who are Ohio State fans for no other reason than they were kids. They're also Patriots, Lakers, and Yankee fans.
They're kind of insufferable. Like they're pretty insufferable for. I mean, I guess they won in 2014 Ohio State.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I don't agree with their hate for Ryan Day either. But again, that's I'm not in the fan base taking the pulse of it.
Top 5 most privileged fan bases. They've never gone below 7-5. Fun fact: Ohio State in the history of their program has never gone below 7-5. So
wow,
very privileged for how they act. I'll say that. But I would say, I don't know. I don't like Texas. I will never cheer for Texas. That was an old hated rival, which I think GA you can agree with, being a Nebraska guy yourself. But other than that, like if I had to pick a team, I wouldn't say it's more conference based. I would just say it's more brand based. Like I just told you, Ohio State's privileged. I wouldn't mind seeing like a Penn State make a run for it. And we grew up in the time frame where Nebraska and Notre Dame used to go at it. and start fights between fans. And it used to be more of a rivalry way back when. But in my timeline, it's not really following that rivalry. So I don't have the hatred for Notre Dame as most people do. I would really like them to join a conference. So maybe I'll give them the back seat. But I would say Penn State would be my team. And it has nothing to do with the Big Ten, just more in fact of I wouldn't mind seeing, somebody who's considered a second or third tier Big Ten team all of a sudden win the national title and take the front race there. What do you think, Jake? Is it conference based at all outside of what you said? Your one team, would you say you support Texas because they used to be in the Big 12? Anything like that?
No, not with these 4 teams. Well, I've made it clear that like my de facto team outside of Iowa State's Notre Dame, and like being able to follow them this year. And I have a friend I watch every game with, and just that's been a lot of fun to follow. And I love Marcus Freeman. I think he's one of the best in college football. So I mean, outside of that, no, I really don't care for the Texas things, whatever. Ohio, I might put Ohio State as they're more insufferable than Texas. And then Penn State, good for you. You got this opportunity in the national spotlight, and this is what the 12-team playoff was built for. If they go out and win it, fine. It'll kind of surprise me. It's just like Drew Allar's a national champion, like James Franklin's a national champion, but that's the exciting part. So I don't know. And Parks, you made the point too. You're like, I wish Notre Dame would make a conference. After this year, they will never join a conference.
Why would they? They lost to NIU and they got in.
Well, that, yes, but they got a home they got a home playoff game. They are getting hot at the right time. They didn't have to. Yeah, I mean, they had it was a decent schedule. It's not like it was a cakewalk, but it was a decently easy schedule down the stretch. On top of, they keep all the playoff money that they don't have to share it with anybody else. So
they get their own percentage. Yep.
So like if they haven't joined now, they never will. And this is the perfect case in point is this year.
I think that's a good place to leave it. But that's a good question there. Let's go back to the recaps of the games. JP, did you have any quick thoughts on Arizona State, Texas, and that one?
Yeah, I just thought I think we covered that pretty well, that Dillingham was going to do whatever he could to win that game in most spots. Like we were going to get tricky quick. Things were going to get odd. And if Texas couldn't slow that down, they were going to find themselves in a tough spot. I thought the second half, ability to run the ball for Texas, like that's alarming to me. Inability to run the football at all on that Arizona State team. And then I felt like the ball they got picked that Quinn threw late in that one, that guy's open. I mean, that's got to be 6. That was one of my big takeaways on it. Was I thought Quinn looked really good and did everything he had to do outside of that ball that should have been 6, right? That thing got floated up a little too high up in the air, gave the safety a shot at the ball, and the rest is history on that one. But I think what Arizona State did was kind of give the Big 12 a little bit of pump up, right? Like it has helped it for the next couple years at least.
You hope.
Yeah.
I just think people forget.
That's the example.
It is the example.
But are they going to forget it because that was the most memorable playoff game to this point?
I hope
that's
so.
The one that's going to pop up on all your videos, all your hype videos for each year. When they talk about ranking these games 14 or 12, that one's going to be in the top 4 or 5, right? So I think that's huge for the sport.
My rebuttal is, what if Texas goes and loses by 4 to Ohio State? And they just,
if we're playing by proxy and we're doing this, but this did this and this did this, actually Grandview is better than Georgia because this team beat that kind of stuff. Like if we're going to play that, like then we don't really love watching the sport. Like we just want our names and brands and words in there to tickle the fancy of a couple 500 people instead of the millions that watch and love this sport.
Go ahead.
I was just say all the 12 teams were great, and it's awesome that like I think we got 12 right, especially after watching Alabama and Miami. And well, I guess, Ole Miss put a 52 against a Duke team that's playing their JV, but that's, besides the point. It's the homer in me, and I may be wrong, but like after watching BYU in their bowl game, like I'm pissed at myself for believing the propaganda that BYU team wasn't good enough to play in a playoff game, and they have the head-to-head with SMU. And I let the national media just sway me away that they lost their last 2. They lost against Kansas and they lost against Arizona State, 2 really close games. And I let people just, I don't know, brainwash me that, they were an afterthought to me on like any of those last 3 that should get in. And I'm not doing it again. I won't let it happen.
What about Illinois?
Year. Illinois is a good team too. Yeah,
Pump
no,
your
I agree.
chest a little bit. I mean, they had
But
losses that fight anybody.
they have 3 though. They have 3 losses.
They have Penn State still in it.
I
Ohio
know
State
who they
still in
lost
it.
to.
That's what I'm saying,
Oregon.
though. That schedule, we're playing 9-3 games though with the other ones. Like, come
I
on now.
understand the schedule strength, but 3 losses is just like.
But
It
that
should
was
be
the whole thing
It
with
should
those
be
other
disqualified.
bubble teams.
Illinois
they
had
had
a
3
really bad loss that
That's
made
why
them
I'm
not a part of that conversation.
and that's why I'm saying,
So did Alabama.
that's what exactly. That's why I think
And South
BYU
Carolina.
was ahead of all those teams. If there was a team that we should talk about getting in, it's a guy who a team in BYU had a head to head with SMU. Now, I'm fine with SMU getting in. That was fine, but it was just like letting the narrative that BYU shouldn't have been in that conversation. I let people sway me away from that.
It's fair.
Yeah, BYU did really look good. I think when I look at the Arizona State Texas game, I think it just does so many good things for the Big 12 in general. Just for what you just mentioned, Jake, of like realizing other teams that were competitive in that conference, and then you get to see them in a Big 12 matchup with all the talent in the world in Colorado, and they dominate that one. It's just big for them to compete because when you get only one representative and they represent themselves like, let's say, a Boise State did or an SMU did out of the ACC. I mean, even Clemson battled better than SMU did. It turns a lot of people off going forward for those last few spots. It's huge for Arizona State to compete like that. Obviously, they're a conference champion and got the bye, so they're automatically in. But going forward, I feel like people are going to maybe give a second look to a second Big 12 team than they would before,
Hope
as
so.
they should. So I think that's pretty much my main takeaway for that matchup.
Well, if we want to switch the conversation to another game, let's talk about like Boise State for a second. And Boise State was clearly, I guess we all agree here that they were deserving to be in the playoff.
Yes.
But I don't want it to be the conversation going forward every year now that there should be at least one G5 school in the playoff, because that Boise State team this year would have beaten Liberty last year by 40 points, maybe a little exaggeration, but you get what I'm saying? Like, let's not just automatically assume every year that the top G5 team can compete. Boise State, clear and cut. I'm in like resume, clear picture.
Yeah.
They deserve to be in this year, but a lot, especially with the transfer portal now, a lot of these guys are always moving. I'm just not sure yet that there's going to automatically be a really good G5 team that can compete next year. I hope there is. I hope I'm wrong.
And that's fair to put it. I mean, you saw what happened to Liberty last year against an Oregon team that played majority of their starters. But yeah, that team, I would agree. I don't. What do you think?
Can't get decapitated on live TV and then act like you deserve to be there. Like you're talking about the G5 team, and I want one in every year. I think if we're going to keep this lifeblood of the sport rolling, we have to actually have some merit behind our words and what we're saying.
I do too.
I don't know if it'll be that way every year.
You think we should just always you always want, no matter what, we always put a G5 team in, even if it's a 10-2 G5. You want
the price you pay for the system that was built by people who don't care about the whole sport. They don't care about 134. They care about 67 or whatever the number is, right? So this was built incorrectly, to exclude and do that. And it's a different, way that conferences run and the teams run. But if we're going to fight for this as, 134, we pound our chest here about talking 134. Then they need to be in the conversation. And I think they need to be in every year. Like, that's up to them. And just this whole thing getting figured out like around them in the landscape of football on whether they compete every year. But you have to, it's got to give them a shot. I think there's obviously like a 10-2 Mountain West champ versus a 11-1 CUSA champ conversation needs to happen, or, things like that. Like the Sun Belt needs to pick it back up. Sun Belt didn't have a great year with the teams that we thought were going to be good in that one. Didn't
like cannibalize itself. I said that going into the year. They always do.
It's just one of those things that I feel like it needs to be there for sure for the life of this sport, for it to, radiate through the whole thing and have everybody have a real shot here and make the sport as great as it should be.
We had a G5 team in this year. Jake, you shared the tweet with us the other day, 12% up in viewership of college football in general and bowl season. So people are watching, people are opting in. I saw a graphic today that like the top 10 draft prospects all opted into their bowl game. Yes, a majority of them were playing in the playoff, but outside of that, Travis Hunter, guys like that played in the bowl, Cam Ward, that at least played in it. that matters for the sport. So it's big going forward. But I agree, JP. I think you got to have a G5 team in there because you might run into a Liberty now and then, like we saw last year. But that chance of a Boise beating Penn State or somebody beating somebody on their home turf, like I want to go back. I wish Boise wouldn't have gotten that bye.
Then let's
I'm
give
glad
them.
they
Then
did.
let's put them on their home turf first.
That's what I'm
and make
saying.
them play. Yeah, no, I agree there. That'd be fun.
Can you imagine that first round Boise, Idaho on the frozen blue turf? Like that
Yeah.
is viewing pleasure right there. So, all right, I don't want to get too far off track. Let's go back to the games. Let's quickly recap Ohio State and Oregon. This one was BTA, belt to ass from start to finish. Jeremiah Smith, best receiver in the country, definitely the best true freshman receiver in the country, absolutely went off against this Oregon defense. What do you guys think on this matchup, JP?
Yeah, I think you came out and you kind of found that Oregon wasn't ready for the physicality of that. And then once they had a chance to bow up, they were just eaten alive and picked apart in the secondary in some spots. Ohio State didn't overcomplicate the way they were going to do things. It was as simple as get the ball to your playmakers in space and let them do their thing. And when, it felt like Ohio State, after one or two stops against that Oregon offense, really put their foot in the ground and then showed their teeth a little bit and just said, this is not happening today. And it was a little too late. The adjustments weren't made. Coming off scripted drives for Oregon, it never got any better. Inability to run the football, inability to protect Dylan Gabriel from doing anything. That's a difference. When you shut down, no Evan Stewart in that also makes a difference.
Yeah.
Coming back next year.
I don't think there was a chance that Gabriel, he wasn't even upright to even have a shot at throw to these receivers that are that talented. I'm not saying that Ohio State secondary can't be had because it's been proven that it can be, but there wasn't even a real shot for him to do so. I mean, I think that once they got out of the couple scripted drives and into adjusting to this, they just did not, and it was just too little too late. It was quick. It was painless. The death was swift. It is that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a tough look for Oregon fans who got a little chippy and talkative in the offseason with Phil Knight's money behind it. It's a fan base that hasn't really got to experience that gigantic win outside of a college football playoff game to get to a national title, and then they get blown out by Ohio State. Then they get to witness it again in this spot after coming off a bye, the only undefeated team left in college football, and that's the product they roll out. So I took more away from Ohio State, honestly, and you want to talk about hitting your stride, like we said with Penn State earlier. Ohio State's hitting their stride right now, and it's so fun that we're going to have the sports narrative of a rivalry building, even one of the biggest, if not the biggest rivalry in the game, building going forward. Because if Ohio State wins the national title, it will always be tainted by losing to 6-6 Michigan in the same year. So I love that the sport always gets that greasy little narrative going. What did you think of the game, Jake?
I just think I underestimated, I guess, Oregon is just a little off as far as being a national title contender physically. They're not there yet. I kind of thought the defensive line would be better. And yeah, they're good. They're great, but Ohio State's elite. Georgia is elite. Texas is elite.
Georgia's not elite.
Defensive line?
They're not elite.
Well,
if their defensive line this year is elite, what were the ones from the last couple of years? God tier?
The standard of the last few years, even if you want to say this year was a down year, whatever. But the standard
it
that
has
has been
defensive line. I'm not saying it was. I'm just saying
is JP SEC bipolar? I mean, he was sticking up for him like crazy, Texas, Arizona State, and then now we're here shitting on Georgia.
Here's my point I'm trying to make. You see the standard of the Georgia defensive line and the Georgia defense over the last 5 years. It is elite. Mm-hmm. There's no question about it. Even Texas, 100%. The last 2 or 3 years has been elite. 100%. Ohio State, been elite. Oregon's not there defensively. And I kind of thought they were making strides there. I thought Birch was better. I think DJ U's brother needs to be a little better, but yeah, they have some things to work on and go after in the portal this year. And they did last year. They picked up that Michigan State defensive tackle too, and he was good. But I think it's a development thing too. Ohio State develops really well. Georgia develops really well. Texas develops really well. And then they pick up 7 elite guys in the portal. Oregon's got that to work on for Joel Lanning if they want to be the cream of the crop. But they're in a weird spot. There's probably 3 cream of the crop teams, and then they're right there. I'm not saying they're not. You didn't go 13-0 for no reason.
I have to lie. You said Joel Lanning, and I'm like just having
Oh,
flashbacks.
Joe Lanning. I'm sorry, Dan Lanning. Goodness gracious.
What
If
a
you can
pull!
pull, if anybody can know who Joel Lanning is, I'd love. Well, we might have an Iowa State fan in the comments.
There's got to be a
but-
couple that know Joel Lanning is.
Yeah, the two Iowa guys had flashbacks in that scenario. I was just rolling with
thinking
that. I
like,
thought
oh
you
my
mixed up the
goodness.
hat. I was like, what? I was just going to let it go. But good call out. All right, let's move on to the last one that we're going to talk about recap-wise. Let's go Notre Dame, Georgia. This one was a low-scoring battle to start. Right before the half, Notre Dame takes advantage of a Gunnar Stockton fumble. Really, Notre Dame's defense dominated the entire game throughout. A big sideline interference call resulting in pretty much the social death of a red shirt defensive back for Georgia. Shout out to Parker Jones. But what did you think on this matchup? Go ahead.
You would just like ESPN. Like, are you
They
kidding
did
me?
show him so much.
Unbelievable.
Leave him
dude.
alone.
They went right after him.
And it wasn't like egregious. The kid made a little mistake, but it's like, are you kidding me? Like, we're in the fourth quarter. We got Bell dropping fucking 75-yard wide open post routes, but we're going to show Parker Jones on the damn screen. Like, give the kid a break. They weren't even guaranteed to score that possession. They were on like the 14 and then they backed him up because of the penalty. And I don't remember if they settled for 3 or whatever that possession, but it's like, Georgia wasn't scoring in the red zone all day. So yeah, we're gonna point the finger at this freaking at this kid. I don't know. It was unbelievable.
They weren't scoring in general. I mean, this Notre Dame
Exactly.
defense
That's what
has
I'm
been
saying.
dominant. So there is no saying that. But what did you think of the game, JP?
Yeah, I mean, I liked Notre Dame in that spot a lot. I thought they were going to be the better team just based on the injury and what they were getting, and Georgia's inability to continually have good offense and play well. No run game, no Georgia. Drops again throughout the entire season. And then just an inexperienced quarterback who had to do a lot more against an elite defense. I don't think that was, a real recipe. I think why it was, as low scoring as it was, and we talked about it, was just Notre Dame and Riley Leonard aren't a vertical passing threat. And when Georgia can put 7-8 in the box, like that makes a difference. It's hard for anybody to run that kind of offense within that kind of box and with that good of a front seven. So I think that makes a difference, and that's why. And then, Notre Dame takes their advantages and turns them over a couple times, makes a couple big plays, and you're like, bang, that's what they needed, right? They needed 1 or 2 big plays. They needed a special teams burst. They needed just a couple things to go their way and play really clean, sound football. It's exactly what they did, and that's kind of been their brand the entire year. And so, like, it didn't go exactly as I picture. Like, you don't sit there and picture strip sacks and, punt returns and things like that. But you do picture, like, both teams struggling to move the football consistently and stretch the field vertically as they both did throughout that one. So I thought it was pretty much exactly as we expected. I think one of the few that we thought went pretty close to what we were expecting to see happen. But definitely an awesome game to just see those two teams, very similar, very well-known brands on that stage, and both, for the most part, deliver a game that was very enjoyable to watch.
I kind of saw exactly what I thought I was going to see when it came to Notre Dame's defensive game against a questionable Georgia offense. Like I said, they didn't really have that star standout player that they've had in the past, like a Brock Bowers. Notre Dame took advantage, even though they've been banged up all season long. You get a second string quarterback in Gunnar Stockton, who still is an elite quarterback. He showed flashes of the future for sure. Like, I don't think they're in a bad spot with him being at the helm now and Beck going to the NFL. I may be in a better spot, to be honest, with how poor Beck played at some points in this season. But really, Notre Dame's defense is the takeaway again for me. And just going forward, looking at their matchup this week, boy, oh boy, is that going to be an absolute slugfest. So I'm just excited, looking forward to it. And I really think this Notre Dame team has the capability to do it this year. With that defense and what Riley Leonard's been for this squad, another Georgia game where they didn't handle a running quarterback the best, and he didn't even have to do it as much as I thought he would. So good takeaways for Notre Dame, and Georgia will be fine going forward. I don't know how to say it other than that, but I think they're in good hands with Gunnar Stockton. What'd you think, Jake?
Yeah, we'll talk about the winner in the game breakdown, but for me, like talking about Georgia, the game is won. I don't remember if I tweeted it out. It's the middle 4 or the middle 8. The final 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half, you get that turnover, touchdown, start the second half, kick return, touchdown. It was basically the game. But for Georgia, like, I like Stockton. I think the guys rally around him a ton. His story about being an in-state kid, super cool. I thought he played his good as he could have, and he set up guys the way he should have. I just got done talking about the, development of the defensive line and the defensive side of the ball for Georgia, and it's been pretty good over the last couple of years. One area they suck at, like really actually suck at, is receiver. Dylan Bell is terrible. You can't drop balls like that, man, at a program like Georgia. And Dominic Lovett's been fine. Now I know Thomas got in trouble for crap during the off season, and you lose McConkey and all that kind of stuff. I get it, but Oscar Delp wasn't very good. It's hard to replace Brock Bowers. Like, again, I understand, but just they got to make some changes. Maybe we'll talk about and they have. Well, I'll touch on that. We'll save that for later. But I still think there's just so much more room. ETN, I think, is coming back. I think I saw on Twitter. So if they can work with him and get that run game going again, because it was the death of their season, unable to run the football and not being able to catch passes.
Sure was. All right, let's leave it there. Before we go into the transfer portal, which you briefly mentioned, let's talk our great partner at No Rivals, shopnorivals.com. Use the code PTFS at checkout on all your premium collegiate headwear. Check out their new designs. We got new teams coming soon. Shout out to my boy GA, a little inside information because you're always here, but Nebraska is on the way. That is the next team up. So be on the lookout for that, GA. When you see that, pick up a cap, use the code PTFS at checkout for free shipping on all your premium collegiate headwear from our great partner at No Rivals. Shop norivals.com today. All right, with that, let's go to the transfer portal. Let's talk the madness that's been going around. Not a ton of big names, I feel like, going on in the past. Some big names this week, though. Let's lead it off with the mid-three's been very active in the transfer portal. I see Jake giggling at the background I chose today. But, JP, how you feel about your new quarterback, Mark Gronkowski, out of South Dakota State?
First of all, sorry, it's not Gronkowski,
sorry,
is it?
Not
Granowski.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes, Jake.
I'm helping you.
I mean, I don't know what Jake's like laughing about. I don't know what you want us
the
to
graphic was funny.
What do you want me? Do you want me to just not be excited about anything?
No. It's not you, Jordan. It's the like we've had so many other guys commit, and Parks decides to put him as the graphic for our show.
I made it at midnight. I wasn't trying to put any thought in it. I'm trying to just get some shit done, Jake.
Okay. I think I have kind of one of those things going on. Iowa's movement in the portal, and it hasn't been as active as you would like. And I think that's a lot of due to just maybe not having the money ready for some of these kids that are asking maybe too much or more than they're worth in some spots, and not wanting to pay those kids that money. And I think that's completely fair because you're seeing a peak of this pay. What?
Rebuttal. The rumor is they paid him you hear that today? I heard that on that show today. I'm assuming they paid him $1.2 million. That's the rumor.
I'm saying kids that play defensive back, defensive line, receiver, kids asking a lot more money than they're worth. I think this is a big get, but I think there are things that really need to happen outside of that position for that team to be successful in 2025. And it's a lot more than just adding a quarterback that's experienced and talented. That's all I'm saying is like, that's kind of the big thing with this portal season is like there haven't been a ton of names in there that are like, whoa, like completely changed how we're doing things. But I think that just the numbers people are asking and being just legit, just committing because of money. I'm not going to say he did this, but it feels very much like this is what happened with this kid. The Zambrano kid that played tackle from Illinois State goes to Texas Tech. Brother could have played in Tuscaloosa, Athens, Clemson. You just let him know where you want to be, and he'd have been there. To land in Lubbock, I feel like some teams are willing to pay whatever it takes to make certain things happen, even if the kid's not worth that sticker price. But others aren't. And I think Iowa's in the position where they're not willing to shell out that money if they don't think a kid's worth that number.
Jake, transfer portal thoughts. Obviously, that's Iowa. Any Iowa State thoughts off the top? We haven't gotten an Iowa State show from you this week.
They've been quiet since they got the two big receivers, but we'll kind of see. I think they're kind of done for now. I'm kind of in the same camp as JP. There's a couple of people I'd like to see them go get or positions. Maybe they're still doing. I don't even quite understand. I know the window's closed, but I think they can still get targets. So we'll wait and see. But JP brought something up that I thought was really interesting, and it comes across just like the money these kids are getting before the revenue share approval gets put in July or whenever the hell that is. the market this year for this class is getting paid like years prior. And this class is whatever you want to call it. The transfer portal class of 2025 is not even remotely close, in my opinion, to the level of difference makers and all Americans like a Cam Ward that comes to mind. Like John Mateer is the number one player in this class. Evan, yeah, Stewart, and exactly my point. We got Mateer's the number one player in this class. We got Marvin Jones Jr., Patrick Payton. These are two defensive ends that FSU fans were like kind of happy to see go away. Now, is that the angry bias voice in them? Maybe a little bit. But this class, like these class of dudes, I don't see any of these guys going in. And Dylan Gabriel's another. Like, what did they say? What was the stat? Was the last 3 or 4 years the Heisman Trophy winner, or just the top 5 Heisman Trophy guys each year? All of them, or the majority of them, were transfers. I don't see that with any of these guys. Like, I think next year's Heisman front runners are going to be guys who were on their teams this year. That's the way I see it right now, and I don't see it really changing.
Yeah.
I think it's a good place to put it. I think when I look at the portal, I agree. There's not really a star-studded name, but I've liked a few of the pickups that Nebraska's made. Obviously, it's so tough, even as a show, even the national shows outside of like the brands responsible for announcing these, to even follow the amount of names floating around, right? And guys that are crystal balled or predicted to go one way or another. I mean, Nebraska is always in the mix for these guys that it just seems shocking. So until I see something from the actual kid, or I don't believe anything, because there's money being thrown around behind closed doors that you wouldn't believe. And we'll just see what the team we got here when the portal window closes, because the revenue sharing, which is going to be around $20 to $25 million for a majority of 20 for Power 4 programs going into next year, that they're going to have to split up revenue wise. Obviously, 90% of these are going to be split between football, the heaviest percentage that is, because that's what produces the money for the school. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. I wish we had more intel as fans of what they're actually being paid. You get some big name players that are told, but these salary-based programs.
Part of me doesn't want to know, because like the NFL fan in me, like I shit talk Jonathan Taylor a lot. Like he's a piece of shit and he gets paid way too much. I don't need to be doing that with like 20, 21-year-old kids. I know they're amateurs. They're getting paid now. Yeah, exactly.
I saw this the other day. I'm starting a movement. They're not kids anymore. Stop saying kid.
They're still kids. Like guys,
collective check.
We're not that far from it. Just because they get paid doesn't mean they're not kids. Like these guys are, I don't know. I just still can't picture myself just absolutely berating Rocco Beck. Like he's still a college kid in my eyes. Like he's still like got a lot of other stuff going on. I want the best.
Some of them are not though. Like Dylan Gabriel is not a child. He's not a kid.
I understand. There's some situation. There's some different circumstances. I get that, but I don't want to know, because Parks, let's be real now. If you knew what, say Dylan Raiola has another, I mean, he just doesn't really progress next year, I mean, and you know the money he's getting paid, and I know, pay to the collective, and you pay for the items and stuff. You're not going to absolutely just get super pissed and just start saying things maybe we shouldn't be saying it all about these kids, when you're like, what the fuck is he getting paid $3 million for? What are we even doing?
But if he sees him at the rail yard out and about on a Sunday or a Tuesday night, he's going to let him have
exactly.
No, we saw him at the College World Series. Remember, we were all together except for Jake. Jake left. Dylan Raiola was with us at the College World Series. Jake, you went to a different bar, but he was there. There was a few players I yelled what's up to like I was a kid. Sometimes I got to remember that I'm older than him now. Like that kid.
You do have to remember.
Years old. Like I won't even lie. I got an item for Christmas. It's actually sitting right over there. It's a Dylan Raiola sweatshirt with his name on it that my mother got me. And I almost felt weird opening it. Like, can I wear this? Like this kid's 18. I'm now 26. Like this would have been sick if I was 12. But like, can I wear this? Or is it a little weird? I don't know.
My jersey days are long gone. Like I don't wear jerseys.
Well, I don't mind if it's like I have a couple of NHL guys, and NHL guys are super young. Like I have
your pro team, yeah, I kind of get that.
But still, like the guy that I have won a jersey that the dude's the same age as me. It's it's super weird now getting older. So I just want to throw that out there quickly. I would disagree on your point of saying I don't want to know because I would expect more of them, or I donate and it would stop me from donating. Haven't we been doing this for years without actually just going to a collective? Like, sure, I give an X amount a month to a collective, but if I wouldn't have done that, I would have gone to the store and buy 5 t-shirts for $45 and supported the school anyway. So I don't really give a shit that it's going to the kid now rather than the school. Like we've been supporting these kids through GA. Will be at the CWS. We always are. Drinks on GA. I love that.
We get to see GA in person if we make it to the CWS.
Well,
I always say I know. I always say I'm never going.
Like 6 years running right now.
Every year, I'm like, I'm not going this year. And now GA
but
is
you
give me
don't
to go
like
back.
you don't like the baseball, and that's like our favorite part. So.
Yeah, just drink the beer and eat the chicken strip basket, Jake. It's not that hard. You don't have to watch the baseball.
Also, before we segue into these games, these things die in an instant. That thing lasted 30 minutes.
Jordan's light. You need a real plug-in light, Jordan.
So mad.
I don't see the polish on the head anymore. Go ahead, Jake.
I was just going to bring this back to where it all started. This was NIL. This was transfer portal talk, just kind of circling back around. If I actually had to say something about a actual player or a transfer, just because I mentioned it earlier, Georgia does go get Zachariah Branch. We talked about the receivers and the issues they got there. I hate it. I was a Zachariah Branch guy.
He had a terrible year.
He's like love it. What's the opposite of 2.0? Like he's like 1.5. He's like love it 1.5.
The worst of 2.0 would just be like,
you know what I mean?
Version.
Like dude, they need, and the Jeremiah Smiths of the world are a dime a dozen. I get it, but you need a big playmaker. You need a big target who can make plays down the field, not another one of these quick out guys. Like, who cares? You can kind of scheme that stuff up, and you've had guys like that. Like,
that's because Nebraska took Dane Key. Just
good get. Hey, I unbiased opinion. Like, I think Key was a good pickup for them. I would like to see him and Berrien Brown, who went to LSU, actually play with another quarterback not named Brock Vandegrift or who's the kid they had 2 years ago that was just atrocious from NC State.
Come on,
NC State. What was his name?
Come on,
Leary. God, that was.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So
we were big on that one. We were big on that one. By the way, Leary was solid.
Not at Kentucky.
He's
not at Kentucky.
He's better than Vandegrift.
You're just comparing.
I thought we were comparing the last
two. So, like, players aside, hate Branch to Georgia. Prove me wrong on it. Fine. Parks, I'd be happy about Key to Nebraska.
I'm very happy about that. All right, let's leave the transfer portal there because we're already 45 minutes into it. We haven't even talked about a football game yet. Let's do that. Let's talk about the college football playoff, the semifinals game. Let's lead it off with tomorrow night's game. Tonight is Wednesday, January 8th. So if you're listening, game tomorrow night. I know it probably snuck up on you because it feels like a long time. It snuck up on me for sure. But let's talk the Orange Bowl. Let's talk Notre Dame. Let's talk Penn State. This one's going to be a defensive battle. Hard Rock Stadium, 6:30 kickoff on ESPN. Jake, break this one down for us.
Two similar teams with two different quarterbacks. I think that's kind of the headline in this. I think it's going to be really fascinating. You have the pocket passer of Drew Aller versus Riley Leonard, which we've talked about. Like, they're just, Notre Dame is winning football games in a way that we really haven't seen in some time, with just dominating the ground, playing really good defense, and just taking what's given to you. Like, 90 passing yards was good enough to win the game for Notre Dame last week. Don't know if that's going to work this week. I think, my personal opinion, I said it last week, I think Penn State's defense is the best in college football. I think it's better than Georgia. I think Notre Dame is going to have a tall task ahead of them. And Jeremiah Love is, like, I think he's out, man. Like,
it don't sound good.
I just don't think
he's going to give it a rip. It's just what can he do?
He'll try, but I don't think he's going to make an impact in this game. So I think it's the Williams kid that was the third stringer. He was really good. And then obviously you're going to have to rely on Price a bunch, but Price has delivered when he's been asked to, with the unhealthiness of Jeremiah Love. This one's going to be awesome. Like, it could go either way. I think it's going to be ugly again.
I'm licking my chops for 13-10 and just like an awesome football game.
It's going to be great. And I want to just give a shout out. Like, if this is the last Notre Dame game of the year, like, one more shout out to Al Golden and what he's done with this defense, just losing guy after guy. I've never seen anything like it. And they just continue to replenish and just perform each and every single week. And they have a crack at a national title on Thursday night.
That's a good way. Just a good way to segue into my preview. I really want to focus on Notre Dame, both these defenses, 2 top 10 defenses in college football, especially when it comes to points per game, one allowing 15, one allowing 13. So, we're going to get low scoring. The over-under is low for a reason. And it's injury prone. Yes, Notre Dame is, and has experienced that throughout the season, but has it slowed them down at all? No, just like Jake just told you, 4 sacks last week, 9 tackles for loss against your SEC champion in Georgia. That's more than impressive. In a tough spot, I really do think that they have another chance this week to do that against a Penn State team who runs the football incredibly well. You saw them break off runs late in the game against Boise State to kind of create the separation there, 2 elite backs. But until this Notre Dame defense gets beat by one of those elite backs, I will not bet against them. I will not go against this Notre Dame defense because they just keep performing week after week. The other side, you look at Penn State and what they've done. I think that they struggled. I don't want to say struggled, but they allowed plays to be extended in round 1 with Kevin Jennings. Granted, at the end of those extended plays, Kevin Jennings proceeded to throw the ball to Penn State. So if they're going to win this game through their defensive plays, it's going to be in an interception route through Riley Leonard, who's been much better at that in the back half of the year. So really everything on paper and what feels to me leans Notre Dame. I like this defense a lot. I like the experience Leonard has, the confidence his team's playing with, and it's going to be a slow pace game. I don't think anybody's going to get above 10 points in this game. I really don't. I think 10 wins it for you, to be honest. I think it's going to be a 10-6, 10-9 game because both these defenses have done
crazy.
that to me. It's just where they're at on paper. It's the offenses we've seen struggles throughout the season on both sides. I think Notre Dame's been better as of late, but we'll see where it goes. I really think 10 points gets it done in this spot, and I like the Irish just because of what they've done all season and how simplified their scheme is for that defense to be successful. What do you think, JP?
I'll talk Penn State since I feel like we haven't covered them as much right here.
Fair.
I think Abdul Carter's going to play just based on what I saw today out of James Franklin.
Oh, really?
His
Darth Vader pictures that he tweets out that didn't give away.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know if he's 100%, but he's good enough to play in this one. I think if you're going to look at a team and which one you're more confident in finding the little vertical passing game, it has to be Penn State. I understand Drew Aller wasn't great percentage wise, and he was like 13-25 or something like that in that Boise State game, but he also threw a couple dimes that really made a couple differences and well covered routes that were thrown really well. And so I do lean more Aller in here to make better plays, but the problem is that when they've seen elite defenses, he's struggled in a lot of cases. He undervalued legs, like been able to make some plays with his legs when he's needed to. He's not going to do what Riley Leonard does and really like avoid a ton of sacks and scamper for 15 in some spots, but he has the ability to every once in a while, and I think that's huge. And I also think if you can find a hot hand between Singleton and Allen and run into this Notre Dame team, just try to lean on them, a little strength on strength action, just find the hot hand, who's feeling it, what backs kind of figured things out a little bit more, ability to make a cut a couple spots, I think is a huge thing here for Penn State. And it's a big challenge for that offensive line who's going up against defensive line who's been, absolute nails in this spot. And if you want to go strength on strength with them, like you're going to find out quick. We talk about this Penn State offensive line being solid, but not elite in some spots. I think this is a time to really show up and, bow up a little bit. And if you can just protect Aller, I think there are some spots that you can find some mismatches, and it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be plentiful, but there'll be ones in some spots that you can really make some plays on the offensive side of things. I think defensively, Riley Leonard's going to have a hell of a time finding any real chance to stretch this defense vertically. I think without Love here in this spot, I think the run game struggles unless they find a way to get Leonard out of the pocket and get creative in some spots. And Marcus Freeman's shown that he will get creative, and they've done some different things offensively to kind of make something happen. But I think Penn State is in a perfect spot here to really slow down what Notre Dame does offensively. I think, like you said, within that Georgia game, Jake, like just a couple big plays in certain spots that just really blew it open. Will Penn State do the same thing, give Notre Dame that chance? I'm not sure. You can't count on it because turnovers, aren't always, skill-based. They're not always luck. It's just kind of the way the ball bounces sometimes. But I think Penn State is in a great spot here to to win this one. And I kind of like Penn State in the 2.5, or I think it's 1.5 now, but you can put it at a pick 'em. I'd pick them in the same spot. It's just I'm a little more confident in them finding their groove offensively and continuing the defensive prowess that they've shown. Not that Notre Dame won't do the same defensively, but I'm just picking the quarterback I would rather have on my team at this moment in time. And the two.
All right.
Fair enough.
Fair enough is right. Let's go roundtable style, wrap this one up. Who's going to win? Who's going to cover? Who's going to move on to the national championship? And who's going to be the difference maker in this matchup? Pressure goes down to Jake.
Well, first, before I get into my pick, I do have to shout, like Stanford Steve, shout out to my guy, but like the big boys, the playmakers, Tyler Warren, Mitchell Evans, like couldn't get a better.
I can't believe I didn't mention.
Couldn't get a better tight end matchup here in this one. That'll probably be the difference maker on offense for each team.
Mm-hmm.
My head says Penn State in this spot. Penn State feels like the better team, the more healthier defense, but this is our show. We are not ESPN. I am not obligated to pick one team or the other. I can be a little biased on this, and I'm just going to continue to ride the Irish train until we get off the tracks. So it's Notre Dame for me. I'm not confident by it, but I do have money on Notre Dame. There is a scenario where Notre Dame does win this game, but if we look at this game Friday night, Saturday, looking back on it, and like, yeah, Penn State was clear and cut the better team, would not surprise me.
All right, there it is. First pick on Notre Dame. I'm going to go with you. I like Notre Dame in this matchup. I'm just kind of what I said in my breakdown. I'm not betting against this defense until they prove me wrong. And I have absolutely no reason to believe that they're going to prove me wrong against this week. I think they can force a couple of turnovers. Mentioned him earlier in the show from our boy GA, but Xavier Watts on the back end, that's my bold prediction. I think he's going to have a pick this week. I don't think Penn State tries to have explosive plays as much as they should. I mean, we've literally heard media people tell James Franklin to throw the football deep. So I think maybe if they're too, reliant on the run and busting a big play via that, they can get themselves in trouble because Notre Dame has the ability as well on the other side. I think their outside weapons, which we've mentioned in previous episodes, they're a little underrated. They have some outside weapons that Leonard gets the ball to that are pretty consistently good downfield. So I like them to make a big play and Penn State to not, and Notre Dame to win the game and cover and advance to the national title. What do you think, Jake?
I was just say that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because that was my concern with the Notre Dame defense is even though they dropped some and didn't execute all of them, like those mediocre Georgia receivers beat Notre Dame over the top in some spots last week. Now, are the Penn State receivers even good enough to do that? I don't know. I kind of don't think so, but it is something to look out for. Like, did Penn State see things on film that Georgia just couldn't capitalize on that maybe exposes this injured Notre Dame defense?
All right. Good point there. JP, finalize it up. Who's going to win? Who's going to cover? Who's going to be the difference maker?
Yeah, I'll take Penn State 20-17 here, a couple field goals in some spots. And if they're going to win this game, it's going to have to be Drew Aller making some plays in spots. Not necessarily screaming that he'll be MVP, but I'm going to tell you he's going to be a big reason why they win this one. High completion percentage, limited turnovers, a couple big plays with your legs down the stretch to make some things happen. I like Penn State in this spot. And again, wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame wins this thing. Wouldn't be surprised if Penn State does. I'm going to lean a little bit more with the Nittany Lions here in this spot.
Big Ben homer.
I'm betting on the quarterback I'd rather have, and I think the better backs. Like if we're going to play two elite defenses, a lot of times two elite defenses show up and bow up against each other. The offenses win out in some spots. Don't know if that'll happen here, but that's the team I'm going to take here.
This almost gives me like the same feeling as like that Georgia Clemson 2022 kickoff first half. You guys remember how ugly that was and how good those two defenses were, just beating the shit out of each other for 40
straight minutes? The first game of the year? That one in like Charlotte?
The kickoff one.
God,
that was
like literally the ugliest college football game of all time.
Yeah, it just gives me that feel like it's going to be the pick sixes to make a difference. Like that's just where both of these programs are at defensively. So that's the way I see it. We'll see how it goes tomorrow night in the Orange Bowl. This one is absolute must-see TV, and it's so fun that we got this matchup late in the year. So check that one out live on ESPN at 6:30 Central in God's time zone. All right, let's move it down the line. Let's go to the other one. Let's talk the Cotton Bowl, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl in AT&T Stadium. Two teams battling out in Dallas. One of them gets to stay in their home state in Texas, facing the Ohio State Buckeyes coming off their gigantic win against the number 1 overall seed Oregon. Ohio State's a 5.5-point favorite against this Texas team. This one on Friday night, 6:30 kick. Let's break this one down. JP, do it for us.
Oh, I hit the mute button the wrong way. This one is, I think, a little more interesting in some spots than maybe people may think, because I'm not going to jump off the Texas train quite yet. I understand that they've shown some weaknesses and consistently shown, I think they've kind of shown who they are in some ways. And you have a buzzsaw rolling in Ohio State that looks as good as any team's looked in 2 consecutive games the entire year. But I just want to see Texas and that defense really show up to play. I think they were more so caught off guard and not ready for the trickeration and the weird stuff that would happen in that game, and momentum got on the wrong side. I kind of am curious if they are going to be able to not allow as many big plays and some things happen. I think it's going to be a little more of a struggle for Ohio State to run the football in some spots. And if they, stay on the same path that they've been on, where it's just get the ball to playmakers like Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka out wide and things like that, there are some big things that can happen there. And I think defensively, Texas is equipped to handle that, because I think it's the best defensive line in the country. And when you consistently put yourself in a spot where you've been scared, it's fight or flight at this point. Like, you can either get steamrolled in the first 5 minutes and have to wake up call, or you can come out swinging. So I think that's what we're going to get out of Texas in this one. And offensively, like, Quinn Ewers looked good in the last one. Again, I talked about the Arizona State ball. That should have been 6 instead of going the other way late in that game. But can you find a way to run the football here? That offensive line needs to be healthy. It's a team that's dealt with some issues, more so profound than Ohio State's issues they dealt with in injuries. When Texas has had these injuries on the offensive line, it's really hurt some spots. And you got to be able to run the football, and just not having that absolute stud in the backfield. Like, Wisner's been good, Blue's been good, but you're going to really need someone to step up, and they did not in that Arizona State game. And I can't say they did in the SEC title game either. So that's the worry, is that if that defensive line for Ohio State and that linebacking core, that front 7 is that good, it gets scary, and you're just really putting a lot on Quinn to hit some open guys and scheme some things open, which are possible. Like, you've seen this Ohio State team beaten in the secondary multiple times, but you cannot just rely on Quinn dropping back, avoiding sacks all day, trying to make plays downfield. Flip side, you got to let Will Howard be who he is and get him out of the pocket and let him use his legs a little bit. The 2 backs you got in Judkins and Henderson have to have their shot to run the ball, and you can't go away from it. But if we're just going to let one-on-ones happen on the edge, it's going to get tough for Texas to stop the majority of those. Like, even if 50-50 balls are landing and we're 4 for 8 on balls that are 30-plus yards downfield to some of these guys, that's still a recipe for disaster for Texas in some ways. So it's just one of those things where I feel like you're running into a buzzsaw, and you really have to come ready within the first 4 minutes of this one, or first quarter. You cannot go down quick. And a lot of people are just like, hey, if Ohio State looks like this or a fraction of this, like, it's game over. Like, they're going to win a national title. They're going to go through this whole thing with one of the best runs within playoff, like, 'cause it'll be the first 12-team one. But to just dismantle teams of this caliber down the stretch is definitely different. So I'm pumped for this one. I really think there's an opportunity for a blowout, but I'm really hoping that this one stays close and tight, and you get a Texas that we've seen some other times throughout the year, rather than the one we've seen in some of these games.
I think one thing on the quicker side of things is people forget the narrative that was around Texas for a while early in the season, kind of right around that first Georgia matchup. Is, Texas hadn't played anybody. And we talk about Texas defense all the time being elite of the elite, and they're very good. Elite, probably the same level as Penn State and Notre Dame, who I just hyped up for 15 minutes in that preview. But they've had quite a couple of questionable games here to start the playoffs, right? Like, you give up 24 to a Clemson team who is competitive. You just have an offensive output that just couldn't be beat that night. And then you give up 31 and pretty much get handled in the second half outside of, the overtime period, the offense looked good. They scored in a heartbeat, but they've given up their fair share of big plays and touchdowns outside of the character of what I think we would have said before the playoffs started, of where we had this defense. So on the other side of things, when I look at Ohio State's offense going against that defense, you have an Ohio State team that's averaging 39.4 points per game outside of the Michigan game. Yes, that's an outlier, obviously. The other 5 games, their most recent 5 games outside of that, 40 points a game. So it's an offense that's red hot. It's a defense that we've seen take a couple of steps back I look for in this game, JP already mentioned it, but Will Howard getting outside of the pocket. We saw Sam Levitt have success with that last week, extending plays, breaking that first sack tackle, because it is an elite front seven for Texas here. But I do think Will Howard has that experience and ability to extend those plays very similar to Levitt and hurt them downfield with the weapons they have. Because without Jordan Tyson, Arizona State still made a few big catches downfield. This is a loaded room that they're about to face, including Jeremiah Smith, the best receiver in the country and in college football right now. So I look for that. Another thing I want to mention is watch out for the wide receivers to not be involved as much as you see maybe the running backs in the passing game. I think you saw it last week. Texas got beat by Scadaboo down the sideline on a deep ball late in the game. I think you look at these two backs at Ohio State and Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson. Those are guys that are well experienced, can get outside and make guys miss one-on-one like JP mentioned. So I look for the screen game to be heavy, look for Judkins to get on a wheel maybe, and for that to be a big strike for Ohio State, because they're really going to focus on that wide receiver group for them, as they should, and they still have elite backs that you're going to need to cover. So I like Ohio State to score a ton of points. Shockingly, against a good elite Texas defense, I just think they've taken a step back, and they're facing a team that hasn't done wrong on the offensive side of the ball, it feels. What do you think, Jake?
Throw it to 4.
You got to think they're double covering them this week, right?
They probably are. If you're the Texas defense, the game is won or lost with you. You are the best unit on your team. You have a great D line. You got to give them a chance. You got to put pressure on Will Howard. But the offense has got to stay on the field at least longer than they did against ASU. I think I tweeted it out after they went up 14-3 and they scored that punt return. They went like 6 possessions straight of like 51 yards, maybe 2 first downs. It was really short stuff. And Arizona State just kept giving it to Scadaboo. Levitt was using his legs like just time after time again. And they wore down that Texas defense in the second half. It concerns me. Like, does the Texas defense give an all-world performance in the first half, giving it a chance? Maybe they're down 7 at halftime, and you're like, maybe Texas can stay in this. But the offense can't stay on the field, and then it's just like a waterfall of touchdowns for Ohio State in the second half if the offense for Texas doesn't keep up. Huge concern for me. And then, the Texas defense has been really good, but Parks, I'm glad you highlighted it. Like in these 2 playoff games, they've been giving up way bigger explosive plays than they're used to all year. So on that side, it's still concerning. The college football fan in me wants this to be as close as possible. I think there are scenarios that this can be close, but there's definitely concern, and for good reason, right? And if you want to highlight anything on offense outside of Quinn Ewers for Texas, like Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond need to channel their inner Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka. Like they got to play as up to par as you possibly can, because those guys are elite. So yeah, Golden has been good.
Downfield for them especially. But all right, that's a good preview breakdown of this one. Obviously, a lot of focus is on Texas defense can step up against a red-hot offense. Let's give score predictions. Who's going to win? Who's going to cover? Who's going to play for the college football national title? JP, you first.
Yeah, I'll go 34-20 Ohio State here. I think it stays close into the pull away a little bit late in this one. Just not enough extended drives and big plays out of Texas. They end up losing this one, but I'll take Ohio State 34-20. Just give me Will Howard. Like if we're going to be high percentage passing like he has been in the last couple, I think it's just one of those numbers talk, and you're sitting there with an MVP that's just a guy that got the ball to playmakers consistently.
All right. I like that. So there's Ohio State winning and covering. Put me on that one as well. I like 31-17 is where I saw this one. I think Ohio State's defense, as much as we give Texas their flowers in a lot of these previews, and they're the main topic of conversation, Ohio State's defense has been pretty good. I mean, they limited Go ahead.
I can't give Texas 2 field goals. I've seen this kicking game too often. Give me 34-17. He makes 1 of 3 or something. 1 of 2.
I believe
like I can't. He can't make 2.
Auburn, I believe he has one of the best kicking percentages, and or maybe he's just kicked the most field goals in a Texas uniform or something crazy. But yeah, no, those 2 missed kicks were brutal.
67%. He's like 16 of 25.
Yeah, I'll say he goes 1 for 2 in field goals. So I'll stick with mine. 31-17. Ohio State's had their struggles on the kicking game too, so it could be ugly. Maybe you see more guys go for it. 4th and 2, 4th and 3 in plus territory. I think maybe you could see a lot of them opt to go for it here rather than take points. That's a good point, JP. But I like Ohio State to win and cover as well. Jake, finalize it up.
We've now seen 8 playoff games, and there's kind of a theme here. Like, I think we're going to get a really good one Thursday night. I really do. I think it's going to be a treat for all college football fans. But there have been a lot of blowouts, and that's kind of what the playoff has been. I know JP highlighted it a couple weeks ago. The fan in me wants this so bad to be great because these are 2 awesome brands, and it has the potential to be an awesome game. But man, like I'm at this point, I'm 38-13. Like I don't see Texas being able to run the football. Quinn Ewers he's obviously not 100% healthy, and the defensive line for Ohio State could give him some real problems. And who's stopping this offense right now? And I already see the narratives of Ohio State blows Texas out, and then they play either an injured Notre Dame team or a Penn State team. They just have their number and they win by 20. And then all of a sudden, here come the guys that go, what was the point of having the 12-team playoff? They're just blowouts. We got blowouts all over the field. So I don't know. I'm bracing myself for the takes, but maybe we get a good game. I got Ohio State easy.
Yeah, I hate those people too, because that's a whole different argument. I don't want to go too far off the tangent, but like, look at the spreads. That's where these games are seen. A lot of the times they're closer in the NFL because it's only 32 damn teams. But yeah, when you have 134, the sample size is going to equivalent to a lot more blowouts throughout the season. But in these games, they're picked close. There's no reason outside of you watch every game throughout the entire season. You've watched Texas 1,000 times like we have, to turn on the TV, see Ohio State playing Texas in this game and be like, oh yeah, Ohio State's got to win by 30. Like, you would not think that. That's just the way college football works sometimes. So it's a fair place to put it. Everybody on Ohio State to finalize this one in the Cotton Bowl. So I think 2 of us have Notre Dame, Ohio State in the national title. JP, you have Ohio State, Penn State in all Big Ten national title, correct?
Yeah. I just want to say,
is that bad? Is that bad for the
what?
Is that bad for the sport? You think that's bad if we get a Big Ten national title? I'm fine with it. I'll accept it.
I'm just gonna say if they blow out both these teams and win a national title, all I'm gonna say is you wanted more teams in.
Right.
This is what you got. No more.
There it is. JP's salivating. He's salivating.
You thought expanding would keep these teams out. All it did was give them a better shot at winning a national title.
Exactly. I agree. Which, is that a good thing? Or again, that's another question. Is that a good thing for college?
I don't know.
football?
I don't think that the 12th. I was anti-expansion for the fact that I thought the format sucked, and I also thought
format does suck. They got to change.
It doesn't. The people that wanted it, and like the casual fans and other people that wanted this, thinking that it was going to create all this parity and all this difference, were just sadly mistaken in understanding the sport and what it is. It's just not how it works.
But is it good for an Ohio State, a team like Ohio State, to get another shot when maybe they probably?
I think so.
Deserve it?
But it's not Cinderella. There's no glass slipper here.
It's not.
It's just a number next to a name, and it's a brand that was already probably, talent-wise, one of the best.
Guys,
2-3 teams in the country the whole year.
It's so funny.
Wait a second. If Ohio State if it would have been a 14 playoff, they wouldn't have gotten in.
I know.
Right.
But they're they're top 2 or 3 teams in the country, talent.
Right. Yeah, we said that at the beginning of the year. We said, guys, this might be one of the most talented rosters we have seen in some time. And now we're seeing it. It literally took until this first time.
I think you're also getting a year where like a lot of the top end teams are nowhere near where they've been the last couple of years. And that's, that's not just expansion.
Which I also think is a good thing.
NIL, that's expansion of conferences. It's just a whole different thing. It's completely different. The landscape is so weird. We haven't even seen what the effect of the last couple of years is about to do in the next 10.
I think it's so funny when you mention that is you talk Georgia and Alabama, who are not what they have been. But in today's day and age of college football, is it fair to say, are they in an even worse spot with the portal? And now these kids bouncing around team to team and thinking, maybe Oregon or Ohio State is a better landing spot for me than Alabama or Georgia now? Like, are these teams that usually can bounce back right away if they have a somewhat down year and only win 9 to 10 games? Are they in a worse spot with these kids now bouncing around and these teams can continue to reload and be just as good going in the future? I would say yes.
I don't know. I'd have to see more of a sample size.
Can we, like, It's fine. Like, I'm excited we got football tomorrow being Thursday, but the NFL playoffs, which
Who
again,
cares? Just kidding.
exactly.
Sunday matters though.
3:30 Saturday on CBS, you have a game. 7 o'clock Saturday night, you have a game on Prime Video. ESPN. Why isn't one of these like why isn't that Notre Dame game on at noon on Saturday? Or even like
Scared to go head to head with the NFL, man.
it's not even head to head. The first game doesn't even start till 3:30.
Don't know.
What are we doing?
Let's move the college football national title off of Monday before we worry about Thursday, Friday games. Get it off my Monday night. It's gross.
I agree there. Like I don't know why you're not playing that Saturday night next Saturday night. We've agreed.
Two
there.
national titles. I've been in Las Vegas, which for all you uncultured folk is 2 hours behind where I am. Kickoff 4:30. Kickoff 4:30 p.m. Monday evening.
That does suck.
Are you gonna be Parks? Are you gonna be in Are you gonna be in Vegas for the national title?
No, timeline falls weird this year.
I'm kind of thinking maybe like a 30-minute live show if we're all home for the national championship game.
I'll be home. We'll be home.
Live,
It will be Monday. I will be here.
Yeah,
Yes.
I figured it's Monday.
We'll next day. We'll be
all
here.
right. Hold on. Our fourth, I think GA might as well just be like our fourth host besides Justin since Reese is gone, but we got to give his prediction at the end. He's going Texas. Oh boy. 31-30. Says the offensive line regresses.
GA, you're letting your wife get to your head, brother. Letting your wife get to your head. I know she's a Texas fan, so I got to call you out. That there's no way you could. Ohio State's red hot, GA. I respect.
Somebody's got to pick them. Somebody's got to pick
them. Yeah,
you can't.
GA, we got to put you on the ATS board.
You know, Justin. If we had Justin on here too, he'd pick Texas. I know he would. He'd pick Texas.
He would. He's probably in the comments right now. He could probably drop a comment right now and say that he's on Texas just to let us know for sure. But he's got to be with where he's at. But we get the last comment in here from Jay Bird, who's commented throughout the show. So shout out to him. I believe the expansion has worked and it has allowed some teams that have faltered during the season to make it. Yeah, I think that's a good point, JP, because that's what I wanted to ask you too, is you hated the expansion, but does 8 sound right? Like we didn't really get any bad games in the 8 team.
I don't know. I mean, the whole thing for me was that it just everybody wanted expansion for the wrong reasons. It wasn't for the Big Ten team that loses a game like Ohio State did late to Michigan to get their chance. It was for BYU to be more of a conversation. It was for the Arizona States, the SMUs, teams like that to be in this playoff.
I wanted the expansion. I just wanted it so I could watch Boise State play.
Hot take. Are we going to look back and I'm going to say it. Are these home playoff games going to be a bad thing?
Why would they be bad? This is a question.
Just because of how much of an advantage it now is. There's no doubt in my mind, Boise probably has about the same performance SMU does if they had to go to Happy Valley. These neutral site games, it's a big difference, man.
They shouldn't have the same issues if you fix the seating.
Yeah, fair. That's okay. Fair. If we fix that, maybe we'll get better games. I'll agree with you there. But
it would take a national title level team to go into Happy Valley in that situation though and win.
Right. That's what JP's saying. There's no reason Penn State should have had to host a playoff game. There's no reason Ohio State should have had to host a playoff game. Like Notre Dame probably should have been the 4 seed, you know? Mm-hmm. So I agree.
That's also good for those smaller schools. Like throw your brand, your place, your school on an national stage, not this neutral state, right?
Yep.
I can see it both ways. But all right, let's end the show there. But before we do, we got to talk best bets and dog. Our best bets of the week. You're not forcing it if you don't have it. But Jake, I know you got one. What's your best bet?
We do have money on Irish, but I don't know if it's my best bet. Honestly, I'm really starting to come around on Ohio State spread. It's not even a full touchdown yet, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I think that's gonna be my play Friday night.
That's a fair pick considering you have them winning 31-13, Jake. So I would
it was like 38-13. They're winning by might even what do they call that, Jordan?
Take an alternate spread. Take 21.
Yeah, little alt spread. Yeah. You take 21.
You know what alt spread was?
minus 21. I couldn't think of the name.
Yeah, a little alternate spread. You probably get plus 20. You probably get minus 21 at like plus 440. or probably higher than that.
I would say
Let
way
me look.
higher than that. Way
I'll
higher.
figure that out.
Would
Parks,
be
go ahead with your
680.
stuff. I'll move it.
Yeah, I don't want to force one, but if I got to, I know it's low to begin with, but Notre Dame, Penn State under just feels that way. I mean, would not be
44 and a
crazy,
half.
right? Yeah, under. I think both teams
You
not
said,
getting.
well,
That's
you
what I-
said,
That's what I
you
like.
said
best bet
first
wise,
team to
too.
10 wins. So that would be a lock, a stone cold
yeah.
lock.
That's why I
I'm
go
also
best bet.
best bet on the under in Penn State Notre Dame. I can only
Oh, no.
on the one with the crown that I can't tell you the name of because they don't sponsor this show. I can get you minus 19.5 at plus 317.
I just saw the same thing. So Parks, you're kind of in that ballpark.
Yeah, see,
right
I
around
was
it.
right. Ball knower.
That's
throwing
just
that out.
crazy to pick them to. I feel like your odds should be way higher for that. I don't
mean,
know. 21 points.
4 to 5 to 1 odds. 5 to 1 odds for a bet like that, and
Sure.
it's not a bad play. Hey,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think you're crazy. If you think it's gonna be 38-13, 21 should be no sweat, right? So definitely take it, throw it out there. Crown, and also Crown Sportsbook sponsor the show.
If I another best bet, I'd play Ohio State's second half spread. I think they're going to pull away in the second half. It's probably
Okay.
I don't know what it is. So
I can
We'll
see
do
that. All right, that ends the show. We appreciate you being here. We recapped the previous playoff games, previewed the new ones, also talked to transfer portal, a lot of NIL, just all college football all the time. We cover 134 teams through 134 teams. Check all those 134 teams, or at least who's available on shopnorivals.com today, and use the code PTFS at checkout. Reminder to like the video, subscribe to the page. Let's get to 1,000 before the season ends. That's on you. We got a long way to go. We got 150 to it, but let's get there. It's on you. Hit the subscribe button. Send it to your friends. We appreciate you being here. We love you. We'll see you next time. Jake, take us away.
we got 3 more, fellas. Let's play it.